Can you identify the following arts organization? Last year it celebrated its 50th birthday. It is one of the 3 oldest and largest organizations of its kind in the United States. Its home is one of the most important architectural landmarks in the city of Omaha. And perhaps most remarkable, the National Endowment for the Arts calls it a national treasure, including it among only a handful of arts organizations in the nation that receive direct NEA funding. I'm Joseph Piper. Please join me for a dialogue on the arts as we visit the Omaha Theater Company for Young People. The Omaha Theater Company for Young People has worked with renowned artists such as Academy Award-nominated actress Deborah Winger and Children of a Lesser God playwright Mark Medoff. Joining me are the company's artistic director James Larson and costume designer Sherry Gertis. Welcome.
Thanks.
I think we should start out the conversation by telling a little bit of the history of the theater. It's 50 years old, or 51 years old this year. How did it get started? What's its genesis been?
It started in 1949 as a project of the Junior League in Omaha, and that's the way a lot of theaters around the country at that period of time, kind of after World War II, did get started. And it was a volunteer organization that would kind of travel from big high to big high school and put on the shows like at the old Tech High School,
right,
or places like that. And they would do maybe 3 or 4 of those a year. And eventually, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Sherry, eventually they got a permanent home at 35th and Center, and that took quite a while to build up to. That really didn't happen until the 1970s, so there was a 20-year period where they really were all over Omaha. And once they got into their permanent space, 35th and Center, and Sherry and I both worked in that space for quite a while, they began to professionalize and got a lot of actors and designers and technicians on full-time staff. And Sherry was in the basement of that building for many years. And so that's, I think, where we established ourselves as, a credible leading professional children's theater all, in the United States. And then I think the next phase was that we moved, and that's the current phase, we moved to the Rose, and we do a lot of national touring now. And I know when I started at the theater, and Sherry has been there longer than I have been there, we were an organization with a budget of $300,000, and now we're an organization with $3 million. So I mean, we've gone through a lot of growth in that 16-year period of time since I've been there.
Wow. What, and maybe it's an overlooked kind of question in a way, but what is the purpose of children's theater? How is it different from a theater we as adults attend?
Well, I think, you see, there are a lot of types of theater, and I think sometimes it's more complicated than to say there's children's theater and there's adult theater, because there's Shakespeare, and there's dinner theater, and there's big musicals, and there is small, intimate experimental theater. So there are all kinds of different theaters, I think, that serve various types of tastes or interests or audiences. And children's theater is really, I think, ultimately it is supposed to enrich children educationally and aesthetically or artistically. But I believe that the only difference between children's theater and the theater that would be more specifically for adults would be in some of the subject matter that you're able to present. But I still think people that go to big Broadway musical type shows, they're interested in a pretty limited subject matter too. So I think all these different niches or categories have their own subject matter that they're in. Children's theater frequently has a child main character or a child protagonist, and that is kind of an important or recurring element in children's theater. But I really believe in terms of the form of the theater, the way the costumes are designed, or the way the scenery is designed, or the characters, or the way the actors play their characters, is completely open. And in fact, fantasy for a child is kind of the norm. And I think that as a result, what I can do artistically, or what Sherry can do artistically, is a lot broader and free form than it would be if I was doing something at a theater where it was just a group of 40 or 50-year-old people that wanted to see a certain type of show.
Right.
We really, fantasy is the norm, and we, over the past 16 years or longer, have done everything imaginable in terms of what you want to do aesthetically, visually, and in terms of movement, in terms of how a script is approached and things like that. It's just that we can't use certain words. There are just going to be some situations.
What makes good children's theater? What makes it successful and makes it work? Is there a key ingredient or several?
Well, I think that I don't approach children's theater, and I've directed at other theaters and universities and things like that. I approach children's theater with the same attitude that I would if I was directing Samuel Beckett or if I was directing Eugene O'Neill. There's no difference. Everything is just theater. So I think sometimes you'll have in theater that's bad because it's kind of talks down to the audience in terms of how it's presented. Okay. It's cloying, it's cutesy, it's cheap. And I think any kind of theater, you can see that, and it kind of can be disappointing. I mean, if you've designed at other places, do you feel that there's any less work involved in costume design for young audiences?
No, it's the same.
Wherever.
And sometimes more interesting because you do have more.
You have a whole different.
Ways you can go.
Children don't know how to be polite necessarily the way adult audiences would be polite if there was something they didn't like. Adult audiences might fall asleep or something, but kids, instead of falling asleep, they'll start talking, or they'll
So when it's not working with children.
You can't get away with something that's not interesting or something that's boring. You kind of have a little higher standard to meet, because their honesty will be not much fun. They start talking about what they saw on TV last night.
So they're almost a harder audience to please.
They're kind of a harder audience. I think that ultimately they don't have as much experience, or maybe oftentimes it's the first time they've ever been in a theater. So I think we also, as artists, have a responsibility to give them something that is really valid and worthwhile. And oftentimes in universities where you study children's theater, they'll frequently say, in fact, children's theater has to be better than regular theater because the children are depending on you to do something really great for them.
Right.